That night the rain didn't just fall and it broke. A single father driving home through the storm saw a shadow by the roadside. A woman clutching a crying baby beneath a flickering streetlight. He almost kept driving. Almost. Because some stories don't wait for permission, they just begin. The rain pounded against the windshield, wipers struggling to keep up. Daniel Reed squinted through the blur of headlights, exhaustion written across his face. It had been a 14-hour shift at the diner, double duty after his coworker called in sick. His hands were cracked, his back ached, and every mile of the Oregon highway felt endless. But home wasn't far. His 7-year-old daughter Lily would already be asleep, tucked in by the neighbor who helped when Daniel's shifts ran late. He had promised himself that once he got her to bed this weekend, they'd bake cookies, maybe watch that old Disney movie she loved. It was the only kind of family time they still had. Lightning tore across the sky, and that's when he saw it. A figure half-shadowed standing at a bus stop that hadn't seen service in years. A woman, soaked to the bone, clutching something small, a baby, wrapped in a threadbare blanket. She wasn't just cold, she was shaking, holding that child like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Daniel slowed, instinct fighting exhaustion. Don't get involved, his mind whispered. He'd been there before, helping strangers who left more pain behind than thanks. But then the baby cried again. Sharp, desperate, a sound that tore through the rain and lodged in his chest. He pulled over. The storm swallowed him whole as he stepped out, water running down his neck, soaking his jacket instantly. Hey, he shouted above the thunder. You okay? The woman looked up. Her hair plastered against her face, eyes wide and red-rimmed. We're fine, she said, her voice trembling, but her lips were blue. And the baby wasn't fine. Its cries had gone hoarse. Come on, Daniel said quietly. Get in the truck. She hesitated, clutching her child tighter. Please, I don't want trouble. You won't find any, he cut in softly. But you will freeze if you stay. After a long pause, she nodded, her voice barely audible. Okay. He opened the door for her, shielding her from the wind. And as she climbed in, Daniel felt something, a faint pull in his chest, one he hadn't felt since the day his wife died. 20 minutes later, the truck heater hummed faintly as the wipers scraped back and forth. The woman sat in silence, her baby asleep on her lap now, face pale but peaceful. Daniel glanced over. Her clothes were soaked through. A cheap restaurant uniform clung to her arms, and her shoes looked like they'd given up hours ago. You work at Benny's? He asked softly, recognizing the logo on her shirt. She nodded, eyes still down. Worked, she whispered. Not anymore, he didn't press. He knew the tone of someone holding back too much. I'm Daniel, he offered, breaking the quiet. Emily, she said finally, her voice faint. And this little one's Noah. He smiled gently. Cute kid. Emily managed a small nod, but her eyes stayed on the road ahead, unfocused. As the miles passed, the air grew heavier with unspoken words. Finally, Daniel asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since the moment he stopped. You got somewhere to go? She swallowed. No. The simplicity of it hit harder than a scream. My landlord changed the locks this morning, she continued after a long silence. Said 2 months behind was 2 months too many. I thought maybe my sister could help, but she hasn't answered my calls in weeks. Daniel said nothing for a while. He watched the rain smear the world into gray shapes outside. I've been where you are, he murmured eventually. Different storm. Same kind of lost, Emily turned to him, startled. You? He nodded. My wife passed 5 years ago. Car accident. 1 minute she was dropping Lily off at school, the next. He stopped. The memory was still raw, even after years of rehearsed acceptance. After that, it was just me and my girl. We lived out of a motel for a while. You learn things about rock bottom when you can see it in your rearview mirror. Emily's lip trembled. I didn't mean to end up here, she said. I was just trying to keep us fed. I thought I could manage, but then everything just kept slipping. Daniel's hand tightened on the steering wheel. You don't need to explain, he said quietly. You just need a warm place to land tonight. She looked up at him then, really looked. And for the first time since he'd stopped, her eyes filled with something that wasn't fear. It was relief, fragile, but real. Daniel's house wasn't much, a small 2-bedroom rental tucked at the edge of town. The porch light flickered as he pulled up, tires crunching over wet gravel. "Come on," he said gently. "We'll get you both dry." Emily hesitated again, scanning the dark yard. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to." "You're not," he said simply. "Trust me." Inside, the air was warm and filled with the faint scent of cinnamon, Lily's obsession with candles. Daniel grabbed a clean towel and an old blanket from the hall closet. "Bathroom's down there. I'll grab something for Noah," he said, already moving. When Emily came out 10 minutes later, she wore one of his oversized flannel shirts, sleeves rolled up past her wrists. The color had returned to her cheeks, though her eyes were still rimmed with exhaustion. Daniel handed her a mug of tea. "It's not fancy, but it's hot." "Thank you," she said, voice cracking on the words. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the kind with one chair always slightly uneven. The baby slept in a makeshift crib Daniel had built from a laundry basket and spare blankets. "Where were you headed?" he asked gently. Emily stared into her tea. "Nowhere, just away." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then maybe you can stop running for tonight." Silence settled between them, not heavy, not awkward, just quiet. The kind of silence that fills the cracks after too much pain. After a long moment, Emily whispered, "Why did you stop? You didn't even know me." Daniel looked toward the hallway where his daughter's drawing still hung on the wall, a stick figure family with the words, "Me, Dad, Mom in heaven." "Because someone once stopped for me," he said softly, "and it saved my life." Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside that small kitchen something began to thaw. Two broken people, a waitress and a widowed father, had found each other in the middle of the storm. And neither of them knew it yet, but this night would change everything. The world was quiet the next morning, the kind of stillness that only comes after a storm. Pale sunlight crept through the curtains, painting soft lines across the living room floor. Daniel woke to the faint hum of the heater and the sound of soft murmuring. He followed the noise to the kitchen and stopped in the doorway. Emily stood at the counter in his flannel, hair still damp but brushed, humming gently as she warmed milk in a saucepan. Noah was perched in a high chair, one Daniel didn't own, fashioned out of stacked boxes and a belt to keep him safe. For a second, Daniel just watched. Something about the domestic quiet, the gentle rhythm of a woman moving around his kitchen, made his chest ache. It was the kind of morning he hadn't known in years. "You're up early," he said finally. Emily turned, startled, a blush rising to her cheeks. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. Noah was hungry and I wanted to—" "It's fine," Daniel said quickly. "You did good improvising that chair." A small laugh escaped her and the sound filled the house like sunlight. A moment later, tiny footsteps pattered across the hallway. "Dad?" Lily appeared, hair wild, clutching her stuffed bear. Her eyes widened at the sight of Emily and Noah. "Who's that?" Daniel knelt beside her. "This is Emily and her baby Noah. They're staying with us for a little while." Lily blinked, then walked right up to the baby, peering into his sleepy eyes. "He's cute," she decided. "Can I hold him?" Emily hesitated but smiled. "Sure, if you sit down, okay?" Lily climbed onto the couch and Daniel helped settle Noah into her small arms. The baby gurgled, fingers curling around her sleeve. Lily grinned like it was Christmas morning. Daniel caught Emily watching, her expression soft, eyes glassy. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked almost at peace. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. By noon, the clouds had cleared, but the ground outside still shimmered with puddles. Emily insisted on helping with breakfast, though Daniel tried to wave her off. "I've worked in kitchens half my life," she said with a tired smile. "You'll just burn the toast." He laughed, handing her the spatula. Guilty. As they cooked, their words began to stretch beyond pleasantries. Emily told him about the diner she'd worked at for 5 years, about late nights, tips that barely covered gas, and a boss who always said, smile more. That's what gets you tips." Daniel listened, leaning against the counter, arms folded. "You were the one keeping that place running," he said quietly. "People like him never notice until it's too late." She shrugged. He noticed. He just didn't care. There was a long pause before she added, "I used to believe hard work was enough. Then I realized sometimes the world just doesn't play fair." Daniel's jaw tightened. "No, it doesn't." Their eyes met, not with pity but understanding. The kind of wordless recognition shared by people who'd both been broken and rebuilt themselves from what was left. After breakfast, Emily gathered her courage. "Thank you for last night." "You didn't have to." Daniel shook his head. "Maybe not, but I think we both needed it." That afternoon, as Lily and Noah napped, Daniel stepped outside to fix the fence. Emily joined him, rolling up her sleeves. "You don't have to." "I need to keep my hands busy," she said. "It helps quiet the noise in my head." He handed her a hammer. "Then let's make some noise out here instead." She smiled faintly and took it. As they worked side by side in the golden light, the yard filled with the rhythmic sound of nails, wood, and breathing. No music, no words, just healing, quietly happening between the cracks of two ordinary lives. That evening, Daniel sat by the kitchen table, mending one of Lily's school projects, when he noticed Emily standing by the window. Her silhouette was still, framed against the orange glow of sunset. She held Noah in her arms, humming softly, the same melody she'd hummed that morning. "You okay?" Daniel asked quietly. She nodded without turning. "Just thinking. It's strange how quiet feels after chaos. It almost feels wrong." He set the papers aside. "Sometimes silence isn't peace," he said. "It's what comes after the noise." Emily turned to him, eyes glinting with unshed tears. "You talk like someone who's been through both." Daniel gave a half smile. "I guess I have." There was a long pause before she whispered, "My husband used to say things like that." Before he left, Daniel froze slightly. "Left," Emily nodded. "When Noah was 3 months old. Said he couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't handle the stress, the crying, the bills. One morning he packed up and disappeared. I kept hoping he'd come back. He never did." The air between them grew heavy. Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You didn't deserve that." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides a wound too deep for words. "Maybe not. But sometimes I wonder if I made it easy for him to go." "You didn't," Daniel said firmly. "Some people just don't stay, no matter how much they should." Emily's eyes shimmered as she whispered, "And some do even when they have every reason not to." When she said that, Daniel realized she wasn't just talking about her husband anymore. 2 days later, Daniel's neighbor, Mrs. Harper, stopped by with her usual basket of baked goods. Her eyes immediately fell on Emily folding laundry near the couch. "Well, well," she said with a teasing grin. "Daniel, I see you finally have some help around here." Emily flushed. "Oh, I'm just a friend," Daniel interrupted quickly. "Emily and her son are staying for a bit." Mrs. Harper's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, I see. Well, that's kind of you." As she left, Daniel could feel the unspoken questions hanging in the air. Small-town curiosity that always came with kind intentions but sharp whispers. That night, Emily sat on the porch steps staring at the sky. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward," she said. "You didn't," Daniel replied. "People just like to fill silence with stories they make up." Emily looked at him thoughtfully. "What story do you think they're telling?" He shrugged. "Probably that I've finally moved on." She tilted her head. "And have you?" Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the living room window where Lily was showing Noah her crayons. "I'm trying," he said softly. "But some ghosts don't leave just because you stop believing in them." Emily nodded slowly. "Maybe they leave when someone else helps you turn the lights back on." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a fleeting second, it felt like she had. It happened on a Wednesday. Daniel came home from work to find Emily pacing the living room, phone in hand, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "It's my sister," she said, voice shaking. She finally called back. "Said I can't come, that I'd be a burden." Daniel's chest tightened. "Emily, I just thought maybe we could stay with her for a while," she continued, almost choking on the words. But she made it sound like I was trash. She sank onto the couch, shoulders trembling. Daniel knelt in front of her. "You're not trash. You're someone who's been fighting too long without help." Her eyes lifted to meet his, raw, unguarded. "Why are you being so kind to me, Daniel?" "You don't even know me," he hesitated. Then he said the truth. "Because once, when I was at my lowest, someone chose to believe I was worth saving. And it changed everything. Maybe I'm just paying it forward." Emily's tears fell freely now, and for the first time she didn't turn away. She let him see the pain, the fear, and something new, a spark of trust. The days turned into weeks. What began as shelter became something like a rhythm. Emily started cooking dinner, helping Lily with her homework and folding laundry before Daniel even noticed it was piling up. Lily adored her. Noah became the little brother she'd always wished for. One evening, after Lily went to bed, Daniel found Emily sitting on the porch again, staring at the stars. "Funny," she said softly. "I used to think home was a place. Now I think it's just people who make you feel safe." Daniel smiled. "Then you're home." Emily looked at him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the porch light. "Am I?" she whispered. "You tell me," he said. For the first time she reached out and took his hand. No promises, no words. Just warmth. Quiet, steady, and real. It was a Saturday morning when the letter came, crumpled, rain-stained, and addressed to Emily Foster. Daniel found it in the mailbox and handed it to her over breakfast. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Daniel watched her face shift from confusion to disbelief, then to something darker. "It's from Noah's father," she whispered. "What does it say?" Daniel asked cautiously. She swallowed hard. "He wants to see us. Says he's changed. Says he wants another chance." Daniel's gut tightened. "Do you believe him?" Emily's eyes filled with conflict. "I don't know. Part of me wants to, for Noah. But another part," she looked at Daniel, voice breaking, "another part knows that if I go back I'll lose everything I've rebuilt, including this." Daniel felt something deep inside him twist. "Then maybe it's time you stop letting the past decide your future." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm scared," he nodded gently. "Then we'll face it together." And for the first time in years she didn't feel alone in the storm. Sunday afternoon brought a knock at the door that froze Emily where she stood. Daniel looked up from the living room, sensing her stillness. "You okay?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She just stared at the door. He walked over, opened it, and there stood a man in a damp jacket holding a bouquet of wilted flowers. His eyes flicked to Emily instantly. "Em," he said, voice tight, "I finally found you." Daniel's posture shifted subtly, protective but calm. "Who are you?" "I'm her husband," the man said. "Or I was." Emily's breath hitched. "Josh, you shouldn't be here." Josh looked around the small house, his jaw tightening as his gaze landed on Daniel and then Noah in the playpen. "So this is what you ran to?" Daniel took a step forward, voice level. "You need to leave." Josh's temper flared. "You don't tell me what to do." "She's my wife." Emily flinched at the word. Daniel noticed. "Not if she doesn't want to be." The air grew sharp with tension. Then quietly Emily spoke. "Josh, please. You had your chance to be here, for me, for Noah. You left." Josh's expression cracked for a moment, guilt flickering beneath the anger. "I made mistakes, but I'm trying to fix them." Emily shook her head. "You can't fix something you broke by leaving." Josh's shoulders slumped. After a long silence, he muttered, "I'll call." For Noah. Then he turned and walked away. Emily stood trembling as the door closed behind him. Daniel stepped closer but didn't touch her. You did the right thing. She nodded through tears. Then why does it still hurt? Because good decisions usually do, he said softly. That night Emily couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, the letter and flowers lying untouched beside her. Daniel entered quietly, pouring 2 cups of tea. He slid one toward her. You think he'll come back? She asked. Maybe, Daniel said, but that doesn't mean you have to open the door. Emily exhaled shakily. I've been scared for so long. Scared of being alone, scared of making the wrong choice. But tonight, I felt something else. What's that? Free, Daniel smiled faintly. Freedom suits you. They sat in silence for a long moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space. Then Emily said, almost in a whisper, You saved me, Daniel. He shook his head. No, Emily, you saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land. Her eyes glistened as she whispered, Maybe that's all any of us need sometimes. A place to land. Weeks passed. Autumn crept across the trees, painting the small town in hues of gold and red. Emily got a part-time job at a local bakery. Lily insisted on visiting after school to taste test every new recipe. The laughter that had once been missing from Daniel's home now echoed through it daily. One evening, as they all sat down for dinner, Emily noticed a family photo of Daniel and Lily on the wall. She smiled softly. You should add one with all of us. Daniel looked surprised. All of us? Yeah, she said shyly. You, me, Lily, and Noah, I mean, if that's okay. He met her eyes and saw not just gratitude, but something deeper, something real. Yeah, he said after a moment. I'd like that. It was small, simple, but to both of them, it meant everything. Late one night, thunder rolled again outside. Emily jolted awake, heart racing, the sound dragging her back to the night she'd met Daniel. She slipped quietly into the living room, where the rain tapped against the windows. To her surprise, Daniel was there too, sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. She shook her head, sitting beside him. Storms still scare me. He looked at her, voice low. They used to scare Lily too. I told her once that thunder is just the sky reminding us we survived the last storm. Emily smiled faintly. And did we? He turned to her, eyes soft. We did more than survive, Emily. We started living again. She didn't hesitate this time. She leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or desperate. It was quiet, tender, full of everything they'd both lost and found again. Outside, the rain kept falling, but for once neither of them feared it. Months later, the diner on Main Street had a new waitress, Emily. She carried plates and laughter in equal measure, her name tag slightly crooked, her smile unguarded. Daniel would often stop by after work with Lily and Noah, who now called him Duh, one afternoon. As she served them pie, Lily asked, Are we a family now? Daniel and Emily exchanged a glance, half laughter, half tears. Emily knelt beside her. What do you think, sweetie? Lily grinned. I think we've been one for a while. Daniel took Emily's hand under the table. She squeezed back, eyes bright with gratitude. Sometimes life doesn't give you the ending you asked for. But if you're lucky, it gives you a second chance and the courage to believe in it.